we are ready to go, and I'm going to turn this entire thing over to the Vice President of Star Wars Corporation, Mr. Charles Lippincott. Let's welcome him.
We just saw Star Wars.
Let's put the lights down.
There was a TV spot. I thought it looked awfully short.
Now we're going to do a little presentation of what Star Wars is all about. And then after the presentation, you'll get to meet some of the people that worked on Star Wars. And get to talk to them and ask them a few questions. Go ahead and turn on the slides and turn off the lights in here. We can. There was Buck Rogers. In 1929, first piece of space opera to make it into the comic strips was Buck Rogers. There was more Buck Rogers than you could believe. It became a universal serial. Change. And after that, in 1936, came Alex Raymond with Flash Gordon. And one of the most influential pieces of space opera of all time. Change. In the 30s, change back. Okay. In the 30s, this shows you the idea of how people looked at teleview screens, at rockets. And this is the way people 40 years ago thought about all of this. But we've been through a lot. We've been through landing on the moon. We've sent rockets to Mars. So George Lucas began in 1971 working on a concept for an idea for a space fantasy film. He's written 5 scripts. 3 years ago, they really began to settle in. began designing it, working on the concept. And today we have the new space fantasy change, Star Wars. They asked Colin Cantwell, who had worked on 2001, to come up with basic concepts for the rockets. And then they built a place called Industrial Light and Magic, where several people began working on those concepts, changing them, and finding ways of elaborating upon them. And these are the blueprints for that concept and the drawings that came out of that. Basically, Star Wars deals with two groups, the Rebels and a galactic empire, which is ruling a large galaxy far off. The Rebels have two types of fighters. The first is the X-Wing, shown here in blueprint, change, and the X-Wing in flight, change. This is the, why don't you focus there? This is the Y-Wing, another Rebel fighter, change, and the Y-Wing in flight. Change. One of the main characters in the film is Han Solo, a Corellian pirate, a mercenary at heart, who falls in with the rebels. He has a Corellian pirate ship, this round ship you see here. The cockpit is the lower right. The ship can fly horizontally or vertically, and the cockpit turns 90 degrees. Change. This is the enemy fighter, the Galactic Empire's Imperial TIE fighter. Change. And here's the TIE fighter over the ultimate weapon, the Dykstra. Change. And here is the TIE fighter on the right, a modification of the TIE fighter, and the main villain of the film, Darth Vader. His ship has this curved wing type TIE fighter. Change. This is the largest ship in the film. This is the Star Destroyer. It's like a battleship. It's probably about 1,000 times as big as maybe larger than a TIE fighter. And it's the main Imperial ship that flies. Change. This is an early version of what is now the Rebel Blockade Runner, which now has a hammerhead on its front. This is one of the variations. Right up here, these are space escape pods, which you'll see in a moment from the film. Change. This is another early version of it, a little bit different. Change. This is the escape pod. Change. Tip that at the rear of the projector, just down a bit. Right. This is the main character of the story, Luke Skywalker, played by Mark Hamill. Luke is 20 years old. He's a farm boy on the dry, arid planet Tatooine, living with his aunt and uncle. His parents have been dead for quite a while. His father was a former Jedi Knight and once associated with Ben Kenobi. And it turns out that his father was killed by the main villain, Darth Vader, in a fight. Right here on his left side is the lightsaber handle, which originally belonged to his father. Change. This is Han Solo, the Corellian pirate, played by Harrison Ford. A tough, rough, good-natured character, cynical, and really in it for the money. Change. This is Carrie Fisher, who plays Princess Leia Organa. She is a senator from the planet Alderaan, and she is one of the leaders of the rebel forces. Change. This is Peter Cushing, who plays Grand Moff Tarkin. Let me focus a bit, if you can. He is the governor of the outer regions for the Galactic Empire, and he is the commander of the new ultimate weapon, the Death Star. Change. And here is Alec Guinness as Ben Kenobi. Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi, former commander of the Jedi Knights, one of the greatest warriors in the past empire before the Galactic Empire took over, now living as an outlaw in the hills of Tatooine. He is called upon by the rebels to help them in their hour of need. Change. Oh, this is C3PO, a public relations translator robot. Speaks 14 languages, all the electronic languages. It has a very prissy personality, and quite often has fights with its partner. Change. Little R2-D2. Little R2-D2 is an information storage robot, a repair robot, has a holographic system in its head, has those arms that can come out, work repairs, like repairs on rebel ships like the X-Wings and Y-Wings that flies with the ships. And very important character, very feisty personality, very independent mind of its own. Change. Here is the first mate of the Korean pirate ship, the Millennium Falcon, Chewbacca, the Wookiee, 7 feet tall, speaks his own Wookiee language, and is a really hard-hitting partner to Han Solo. Change. And here he is, the ultimate villain, Darth Vader. Darth is 6'5", a former Jedi Knight who took the Force and used it for evil. He's interested not in political power as such, like Governor Moff Tarkin. He's interested in the manipulation of power. He is the right-hand man to the Emperor, and he is called upon by the Empire to stop the rebels. Change. In the beginning, the film begins as the princess is returning on a rebel blockade runner. She has just gained the secret information about the Death Star, all the plans to it, through her network of spies. And as she's returning, change, she is attacked by a Star Destroyer. And she puts the information into little R2-D2 and sends him off to look for Ben Kenobi. Change. And just as she does so, she's attacked by Darth Vader and his stormtroopers. They take over her ship, kill all the rebels on board, and take her prisoner and destroy her ship. And the robots take off in the escape pod that you saw before. Change. When the robots land, they have a fight. They're on the planet Tatooine here, out in the desert, and the two robots split up. Of course, little R2-D2 knows that he's to look for Ben Kenobi, and C-3PO is just lost on this vast planet. Change. That night, these short little creatures stand 3 feet high, the Jawas, who speak a random language. They collect robots and various forms of metal and sell it back to the settlers on this sparse planet. They have this 4-story vehicle called the Sandcrawler, and they capture the two robots independently from the other. Change. This is just after they have knocked out R2-D2 and the Jawas are carrying him back. Change. They take him to the Sandcrawler. They bring down that large pipe there. Change. They put a control device on R2-D2 and then suck him up inside the Sandcrawler into the storage area. When he gets up in there, he finds C-3PO is there, and that they are off on a journey. They have no idea where they're going. Change. Meanwhile, Darth Vader, not having found the information concerning the Death Star, realizes that it probably went off in the escape pod. So he sends stormtroopers down to look for it. When he gets there, they find a bit of a robot and realize the robots may have the information, so they start tracking down the robots. Change. The tracks are pretty clear, and they're able to take off after them that morning. Change. Meanwhile, the Jawas have shown up at the farm of Owen Lars, the uncle of Luke Skywalker. And Owen is interested in buying a couple of robots for his harvest this year. He harvests water on this very dry, arid planet. So you can see back there. Change. The Jawas show them a variety of robots, and Owen decides to pick out C-3PO and the red and white robot. Change. And as Luke looks over the red and white robot as they're about to take it, it blows a gasket. So there's only one recourse, and that's to take little R2-D2 right here. Change. Luke takes them back to the workhouse and begins working on him, cleaning him up, and he knocks a little chunk out of R2-D2 that's lodged in him. And his holographic system goes on, and it just replays a little bit of the message of the princess calling to Obi-Wan Kenobi for help. He's quite intrigued by it, change, but he's called into dinner. And at dinner, he learns to his dismay that his uncle has used his tuition money for Space Academy so he could become a space pilot to buy the robots. So he's stuck on this little farm for another year. Change. Meanwhile, while he was at dinner, R2-D2 is run off to look for Obi-Wan Kenobi. So when he gets out, he and C-3PO look around, but it's getting dark. Realizes he'll have to get up early the next morning to find R2-D2 before his uncle finds out. Change. Just as they spot R2-D2 out in the great wilderness way beyond the settlers, where the settlers live, they also note that the Tusken Raiders, the bandits of the territory, are nearby. Change. Luke comes upon R2-D2, and with C-3PO, he knows that nearby are the Raiders. And change. He's suddenly attacked by one of the Tusken Raiders. Change. He's knocked out. Several more Tusken Raiders join the first, and they go to his land speeder and take all of his supplies. Change. Suddenly, an eerie cry rings out, and the Raiders are chased away, and out of the mountains appears Ben Kenobi. He comes down and helps. C-3PO's had an arm broken off. They gather Luke, change, and R2-D2, and he takes them back to his cave before the Tusken Raiders can get back, change. There at his cave, Luke repairs C-3PO. They look at the whole hologram in R2-D2 and learn the princess's complete message that she needs help and that the rebels are in trouble. Ben brings out the lightsaber that had belonged to Luke's father and tells Luke about his father and shows Luke how to use the lightsaber and tries to persuade him to come with him to Alderaan to help the princess. Luke says he has to help with the harvest, but he'll take Ben as far as Mos Eisley, the main spaceport, change. On the way to the spaceport, they come upon the Sandcrawler. All the Jawas have been killed, and the Sandcrawler has been destroyed. And Ben realizes it wasn't Tusken Raiders that did this job, it was the stormtroopers. Luke panics. He heads back towards the farm, realizing that they're following the robot's trail. Change. And when he gets to the farm, his aunt and uncle are dead and the farm is destroyed. He has only one course now. That's to join Ben Kenobi and help the rebels. Change. They head towards Mos Eisley, and when they get there, they're questioned by the stormtroopers about the robots. And unbeknownst to Luke, up to this point, he had not known about Ben's powers as a sorcerer. And Ben hypnotizes the stormtroopers so they're able to get past. Change. They go to a cantina in order to find a space pilot. Young, naive Luke gets in a fight with several creatures. Ben has to come to his rescue. And at the bar, they meet Chewbacca the Wookiee, who says, "Sure, I can fix you up with a ride off this dump." He takes him over, change, and they meet Han Solo, change. Han says, "Sure, I'll be glad to get you off this planet tomorrow morning for a lot of money. You come up with the money and I'll take you out anywhere you want, no questions asked." So Ben makes him a deal, promises him most of the money once they get to Alderaan. And they plan to fly the next morning, change. When they get to the hangar and see the spacecraft, they can't believe it. It must be a 100-year-old dump, that brilliant pirate ship. Grease marks, it's got marks from all sorts of battles it's been in. It's really been through hell. But Han Solo says, "Don't worry, man, this can take you anywhere, anytime, at any speed." Just as they're about to take off, change. The stormtroopers attack. There's a small battle. in the hangar. But they're able to get off and get away and head towards Alderaan. Change. Meanwhile, Princess Leia has been locked up in the dungeon on the Death Star by Darth Vader. Change. Vader takes torture devices in to try to get the information out of her about the rebel stronghold, but she doesn't give in. Change. Finally, he brings her to meet Governor Moff Tarkin, and Tarkin makes her an offer. Tell me where the rebel stronghold is, or I'll blow up your home planet Alderaan, which I'm heading towards right now. She thinks for a moment, is worried, and finally says, Dantooine. Unbeknownst to Governor Tarkin, of course, Dantooine was a rebel stronghold, but it was given up a long time ago, and it's a very far-off planet on the edge of the galaxy. Tarkin, thinking it might be a trick, says, it's not worth it, really. He said, we've got to set an example for the rebels. I think we're going to blow up your home planet. So before our eyes, the Death Star, on its maiden voyage, makes its first kill, Alderaan. Change. Meanwhile, on the ship, Chewbacca and the robots are playing an exciting game back there, which isn't in this picture yet. And Ben Kenobi teaches Luke how to use the lightsaber. He teaches him about the ways of the Jedi Knights. Change. As they come out into Alderaan, they come into a large meteor storm. They can't find Alderaan. They can't figure out where it is. And the only thing they can see is a TIE fighter, an Imperial TIE fighter, a short-range ship. And they know it must have gotten there somehow. So they start following the ship. Change. And as they do so, they are quite surprised. They see something they've never seen before. At first it looks like a moon. Change. And then they realize it's the Death Star, 200 miles in diameter, a man-made satellite rocket. They've never seen anything like it in their life, and before they can do anything about it, the magnetic power of the Death Star sucks them in, change, into the hangar on the Death Star. Change. Darth Vader and his troops come out. They know what they've got. They board the ship. They begin searching, but they can't find anybody on board the ship. Change. Because Han Solo has hidden everybody in his secret holds where he usually puts his pirate booty when he's flying back and forth between the planets. Ben realizes their only way to get out of there is for him to slip off. Shut off the magnetic power so they can get the ship out. So Ben takes off. Han and Luke, meanwhile, attract a couple of stormtroopers aboard, knock them out, take their uniforms and get into them. Change. They learn, while they're doing this, that the princess is on board the Death Star and she's about to be terminated in the detention center. So Luke persuades Han there's only one thing they can do, and that's to save the princess. Change. So they put Chewbacca in cuffs and they start down towards the detention center. Change. When they get there, they break out into a fight, destroy the control board in the detention center. Change. And head down to find the princess's cell off the center. As they do so, they're sealed off. It's one way. And the stormtroopers start pouring in. The princess says, oh, come on, guys. Didn't you at least think of an escape? So she grabs one of the guns, shoots out one of the areas that's holding the garbage room. And they all jump into the garbage room down below. Change. Where they go through a series of adventures. Sealed away. Change. Meanwhile, Ben Kenobi has found the power source that holds the magnetic beam that keeps him there, and he shuts it off and starts heading back towards the hangar. Change. To force him to get out of the garbage room, they decide the only way back to the hangar is they split up in twosomes at that point. Change. And as Luke and the princess are heading back, chased by stormtroopers, they suddenly come to a deep chasm The bridge across it has retracted. Stormtroopers are behind it. They have to close the door down to keep the stormtroopers from getting them changed. Suddenly, stormtroopers across the chasm begin firing at them, change. And there's only one thing they can do, change. Princess starts firing, Luke gets out his rope, and they do their Tarzan swing across to the other side. Change. Meanwhile, Ben Kenobi has met up with Darth Vader. Just outside the door to the hangar, he begins a lightsaber fight to get back at Vader for what he has done. And as they do so, it acts as a distraction, brings the stormtroopers forward, and the rest of the group is able to board the ship and change. They quickly board the ship and start to take off, change. They're chased by several TIE fighters, and Luke and Han have a battle in the sky as the ship goes off, change. Princess realizes the escape seems to have been too easy. There must be some reason for all this, and there is. Tarkin has hidden a secret homing device aboard the ship, and he's following them, knowing that she will probably head towards the rebel stronghold, and once they get there, they're going to blow it up and end the rebellion. So with these boys, he plans the extinction of the rebels. Change. The princess has gathered all this. She does head towards the rebel outpost. It's the fourth moon of the planet Yavin. It's a dense, jungle-covered moon, which hides the remains of a past civilization, much like the Mayans. Change. And in these ruins, they have carved out the war rooms and the hangars, in which the rebels have started building their campaign. Change. The princess takes the information from R2-D2 about the Death Star. They realize there's only one vital point on it. They're going to have to go out with all the power they have. All the X-Wings and Y-Wings are armed, and they are sent out towards the Death Star to blow it up before it can blow up them. Change. Luke becomes one of the pilots, and R2-D2 becomes his little robot in his X-Wing. Change. They head out towards the Death Star, and as they do so, the TIE fighters led by Darth Vader come out after them. There's an 8-minute sky battle as TIE fighters come after X-Wings and Y-Wings, shooting each other out of the sky. As the X-Wings and Y-Wings go in trying to bomb the Death Star. Change. Darth knows he's got to eliminate them now. He starts shooting X-Wing after X-Wing out of the sky to help. Finally, Han Solo joins in his Corellian pirate ship. And as Luke goes in on his last run, Darth shoots both support planes that are going in with Luke. He goes after Luke, shoots out R2-D2. And then the Corellian pirate ship comes out of the sky, hits Darth Vader in his stabilizer, knocking him into outer space, spinning out for the sequel. Change. Luke goes in his X-Wing. He knows the spot, and he makes it. And what's left of the X-Wings, Y-Wings, and the Corellian pirate ship, they all head back to the rebel base. Change. And here you are, the laser cannon being blown up on the Death Star. Change. And in the final scene of the film, Chewbacca, Luke, Han come forward in the giant throne room on the rebel base. Change. The princess is there to reward them for their help. Change. As well as C-3PO and R2-D2. Change. This is Ralph McQuarrie's painting for the first version of the novel, which came out in November. And he's the fellow that did quite a few of the production paintings you've seen in this presentation. Change. This is an early poster we did last summer for the San Diego Comic Convention. This is done by Howie Chaikin. He's penciling the comic book for Marvel Comics. The first issue's out, and Steve Laialoa takes over inking with the second issue, who some of you are familiar with from Howard the Duck. Roy Thomas is writing it. There are 6 issues that tell the whole story of the film, Change. And the film itself will be out May 25th. In 70 millimeter right here in Los Angeles, 6-track stereo sound, Dolby Eye. If you put on the lights, I'll now introduce you to several people involved with the film. The first person to come up is Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker. The second person is the producer of this film, Gary Kurtz, who also produced American Graffiti with George Lucas. Person is John Dykstra, who is the head of Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects shop, which has made all these effects, the flying effects of the film. So,
anybody going to go see the movie?
I didn't tell too much.
Tell a friend. I don't suppose anybody has any questions, so we can just go home, right?
Okay. First question?
Well, the budget of the picture is roughly around $10 million. There was about 2 years of preparation in terms of design and development work, both on the sets, the models, the spaceships, the costumes, and everything else that was associated with it.
The name of the author of the original novel is George Lucas, who has written the script and is directing this film. Yes?
How long does the movie run?
Movie will run 2 hours.
Yes? What's Darth Vader's costume made of?
His apparatus, you mean his breathing apparatus? The whole thing?
costume.
Well, it's a metallic-like substance. He has to wear it because he has been in several battles that damaged his internal organ system. So it's like a walking iron lung.
He's a bionic being. Yes? Can you stand up and repeat that, please?
How big are the original starships that you used for the film?
How big are they? Most of the miniatures vary in size. The biggest ship, as it turns out, is about 4 feet long. Not in terms of the size of the miniature, but the appearance of it on the screen. We have ships that vary from 6 feet long to about 14 inches. The X-Wings that you saw the blueprints of, and the Y-Wings as well, are about 18 inches long. And there are some 9 or 10 versions of each of those for various parts of the film.
Both the X-Wing and Y-Wing fighters were built full size in London. They are about 40 feet long, and the Pirate Starship, which was built full size in London, is about 125 feet long.
Yes.
We had about 9 different versions of R2-D2. Each one did specific things. Most of them were mechanical, some were radio controlled, some were wire controlled, some dragged an umbilical cord. There were 2 versions that had to be operated by humans because what we required it to do was too complicated for mechanical action.
Yes?
Oh, sure.
Yes, there probably should be. We're right now going through negotiations with a large firm, probably about one of the largest in the world, to bring out things. Yes?
Finding trouble with
a reversion of modernization of an Ivanhoe scene.
Repeat that again.
Find, after reading the book, it seems to me that what you've done is updated Ivanhoe. Aren't you a little worried about that kind of thing?
Updating Ivanhoe? That's a new one because we had never thought about that I know of. Do you, Gary?
Well, the story could be set as Prince Valiant or Flash Gordon or James Bond or almost anybody you can name. The actual events that happen, it just happens that it's set in another galaxy in another time, a long time ago.
Yes.
Do they elaborate on the Force in the movie?
They what?
Do they elaborate on the Force in the movie?
They operate on
Elaborate in what sense? More than in the novel?
No, just describe it at all.
Yes, it's mentioned several times.
But it's not as elaborated upon as much as it is in the novel.
No.
No. Yes. How is the effect of the lightsaber done?
In a couple of different ways. Most of the lightsaber material was done with front projection material with lights projected through front surface mirrors on the lens of the camera, and enhanced in some cases with rotoscope animation, if necessary.
Yes, way back there.
I'll mention the music. John Williams wrote the music, who wrote the music for Jaws and The Towering Inferno and several other movies.
With regard to the design of the starships, initially they were patterned after Colin Cantwell's prototypes. They were modified for several reasons, mostly photographic. One of the difficulties with producing a model that you can use in this sort of a film is that if you map it into a shot, you have to be careful with details. So we stubbied the ships up a little bit from the original concept. And the configurations are mostly a matter of proportion of what looks good, what looks functional. And that's the reason they look that way. Very little consideration was given except in passing to the actual functioning systems inside. Although I would suggest that most of the things that you see that are designed, if they look right, they will function. And there's a place to put everything that you'd want to put in there.
Where is somewhere that Dan O'Bannon, John Upton, and Ron Cobb are working on the movie or have worked on it? What did they do with the film?
Dan O'Bannon did some computer graphics for us with several other people for graphic readouts and some computer animation sequences for graphic readout screens. Ron Cobb did some sketches for us, designing some creatures for one sequence in the film, the cantina sequence.
Yes, back.
Part of that depends on how well the film does.
Yes.
What were they actually made of, or were they supposed to be made of? Well, they're supposed to be made out of a ceramic material that they're really armor suits, is what they are. A ceramic material that actually is more or less in the laboratory stage right now that actually works, but they're actually made out of vacuum-formed plastic, which was the only way we could make them in large quantities. We have some scenes where we have to have 50 or 60 of them at the same time.
Way back.
Right now, we're just finishing up the optical composite work on the special effects photography.
Back here.
It's a joy. Actually, the models that were blown up were specifically designed for explosion. There were several versions of any one configuration, some which were very intricate and were articulated inasmuch as their wings opened up, like on the X-Wings, the two shots that you saw one with the wings closed and one with them open. The models that we used for the explosions were cast out of a particularly light material. They were done in the same scale, But this material was used because the density was low enough to allow it to look like a zero-G explosion. And it didn't require as much force to blow it up, so we didn't have to use as much as explosive. Yes?
All right, he wants to know what type of products are going to be put on it. Basically, there's a book, a comic book. There'll be posters, puzzles, doodle art. I think T-shirts, models, soundtrack. Yes, there'll be a 2-record set before the movie's out. The people who we're talking to about major toy companies, they're talking about putting a lightsaber out. About who knows? Anybody who has any suggestions should just contact me at some point and tell me what they'd like to see out.
Quality.
Not now, later. Yes, way back there.
Yes, there is. There's some kind of creature in there, and it's the sequence, as shown in the film, of course, is a lot more detailed than what you saw in the trailer.
Yes. Yes.
Mark, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your role in the film? How did that go?
I just really think it's amazing that someone who has been a fan as long as I have to get a role in a film of this genre. Because I've always been, since I was about 11 years old, reading Famous Monsters and a big Great Harryhausen fan, and I've been to conventions as a fan. And to, luck into something like this. When I first met George for the film, I didn't have any idea what it was. They said it was vaguely science fiction, but there was no script. We just talked to him. And 2.5 months later, I did a test, and a month went by, and I was sure that, I didn't get it. And then, actually, they told me about what had happened in stages. They didn't think my heart could stand it. They said, well, first of all, you're going to Africa and England. And 2 days later, they said, you're going to be in Star Wars. It's going to be directed by George Lucas. And 3 days later, they told me Sir Alec Guinness was in it. So, you can't beat that. I'm very lucky. That's all I can say.
As Mark mentioned, being amongst your ranks at several science fiction conventions, tonight one of the people who worked on the effects into Star Wars is in the audience, Dennis Muren. He shot a fair portion of some of our effects footage for us.
And yes, and he also was the director-producer of a film called Equinox, which some of you may remember, which is a really nice special effects film. Dennis, why don't you stand up? Yes.
What was the major problem in getting the production produced, and what was the major technical problem in getting the whole thing put together?
But we don't have 4 or 5 hours. The first step in getting the film made at all was trying to convince anyone that a space film of any kind would be profitable to make. At the time we started the project, science fiction of most kinds hadn't been made in quite a while, except for Planet of the Apes and a few films like the MGM, what was the name of that? Oh, Soylent Green, and no, this is since 2001.
And Westworld.
Actually, 2001 was a sort of a stopper for science fiction projects because it was so expensive, and it took a long time to make its money back that everybody said, well, maybe we should skip that for a while. And so it's taken, but now in the last couple of years, there's quite a few projects, so the genre is rolling again. But once we convinced 20th Century Fox that it was worth making, then we spent 2 years getting the preparation together, and in that time, without making any changes to speak of, the budget of the film almost doubled just because of the inflation over the last 2.5 years in the cost of making film.
Yes, way over here.
The aliens in the cantina sequence, some of that was creatures in the cantina. We did he fell ill though before we got to that sequence and had to leave the picture and go to the hospital for 8 weeks. So we didn't shoot all of that in England. We shot part of it back here. And Rick Baker and several of his associates did a lot of the creatures for the canteen, two of which are here today, John Berg and Phil Tibbett. And they made some of the other creatures.
Yes.
Have you gotten quite a bit of response from everybody so far?
Quite a bit of response from everybody so far?
About the movie.
About the movie? Well, we're getting a fair amount of response. We get fan mail, and we hear a lot of interest around the country. I think it would be good if people wanted to send letters. They should send letters to 20th Century Fox and the studios, because it influences them making these types of films, if that's what you're interested in seeing. I think it's very important, because we're having problems right now with the studio over the trailer. The trailer's is not really, has a certain group of people that are not for it at the moment. And we think there's a lot of people out there that like the trailer. We've heard a heavy response. We heard at BosCon in Boston, they showed it 20 times. So we sort of feel that, people should have their own choice right now. It's up to them right back here if they can or want it.
Yeah.
All right. Question there.
Well, there are two steps to that. The special effects workshop was set up here first and did a lot of research work. So that shooting is almost like a separate unit. The main unit photography was about 17 and a half weeks. 3 weeks of that was in Tunisia and the Sahara Desert, and the rest was in the studio in England. The main reason we went to England for the production was logistically, it was much closer to North Africa, much easier to fly back and forth and get the equipment and crew organized there than it was from here. Also, we couldn't find a studio here that could furnish us enough space. We needed 12 sound stages all at once because we had 55 sets to build. And we used two studios in England. We used EMI Elstree Studios, where we used all 10 of their sound stages. And we went to Shepperton Studios also and used their large stage, what they call their silent stage, which is 285 feet long and 185 feet wide. It was the stage that Kubrick used for the hole in the moon when they were digging out the monolith.
John, why don't you tell about how long it's taken with Industrial Light and Magic?
Well, it's been about 2 years. We started out the first portion, and in fact, I'd say probably half of the time that we spent developing photographic systems and designing and modifying the miniatures and working out the problems of just putting the material on film in some fashion. It required a great deal of organization, in as much as there are a considerable number of shots in the film, some 400 odd shots that include miniatures and multi-element composites. So it was really, the major problem was to organize it in some fashion to where it was handleable, because to tack each shot on, well, we're going to do shot 125 today, became a real problem. So we developed two camera systems which work in conjunction with one another, which allow us to shoot elements that go into the same shot at separate times, and developed an incredible number of miniatures thanks to our model making staff that was incredible. And we were able to gang things up and continuously run, shooting filmic elements for a dozen different shots, all at the same time, each day, and then combining them later optically. And luckily, the stuff was going together.
Yes.
The Darth Vader was played by an English actor. David Prowse, right. Sorry. And Chewie was played by another English actor, Peter Mayhew. And 3PO was played by Anthony Daniels. What? In what? Well, there hasn't been any real publicity about the actors at all, except for two press releases on the stars. But in the film itself and in the program book and any written publicity, they will be in there. Their names are on the last page, actually, in the credits on that book that you have right there.
Yes. he asked if there's going to be any books about the plans and all that. Our publisher is Ballantine. If anybody's interested in influencing Ballantine, Judy Lindell Ray, send your letters in now because there is interest. We've had people that want the McQuarrie paintings available, who want the blueprints available. We have a lot of prints, and we have also all the drawings from the costumes and everything else. We have a great deal of stuff that we've done. This sort of thing can come out. There is an interest, and it's up to you to let them know that you want it. Yes?
For those of us who were not fortunate enough to live in LA the whole time, when is it going to be a general release?
All right. At May 25th, it will come out in 50 cities in the United States. 3 of those cities will have 70 millimeter: San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. The rest of those cities will have 35 millimeter Dolby stereo. Then on the end of June, it will come out in about 400 plus theaters. And in July, it will come out in about 600 theaters. And in August, near the beginning, it will come out in about 900 theaters. And then after Labor Day, it will be pulled back to keep it in first run as long as possible. Yes?
Where do you get tickets?
It's no longer do they have hard ticket situations where you can buy tickets ahead of time. It will be shown at the ABCO Embassy in Westwood. I would just go over there and bombard them and find out if you can arrange something ahead of time. I don't know. Yes?
The models are made of a variety of mostly plastics, a lot of epoxy castings, some kinds of self-skinning foams. The technology that we applied into the construction of the models is relatively state-of-the-art. It's a lot of celastic molds, which are soft, malleable rubber molds, some injection molding. Just about every form of plastic fabrication that you can come up with was used in some fashion or another to create one or more of the models.
Way back.
What with the huge amounts of money that are required to make an ambitious film of this kind, are you optimistic or pessimistic for the future of this kind of filmmaking?
Well, if you look at the history of science fiction film as a total, then you couldn't be too optimistic because most of the films are not high-grossing films. However, with the films that are coming out now, maybe that will change. Even 2001 has made its money back eventually. If we can make our money back, then there's the chance that the studio would like us to make a sequel to this. And any of the other science fiction films, if you're really interested in seeing them, then going to see them is what does it.
Yes. The Jawas vehicle, the Sandcrawler? Yes.
Oh no, you're talking about the land speeder, Luke's vehicle. It's a ground effects vehicle of some kind. We never explain the technology, basically. Yes. Yes.
Back there.
I wanted to thank you for the beautiful slide presentation. Yes.
Times, even nothing. Star Wars Organization of
Well, any film that costs more than about $3 or $4 million can only make its money back if people go to see it more than once. They take that into consideration to a certain extent, and obviously in the summer there's more opportunity, especially for younger audiences, to see a film several times than there is any other time of the year.
Yes.
For the miniatures, you mean? Yes. Well, the portion which includes the miniatures, which is primarily the spaceships, I would say we use some 25 to 30 odd injection molds, and the molds themselves were a short run injection mold, which is probably very boring to everyone. Yeah. Probably in any one mold we could get 250 to 300 shots with detail that would last. And the molds themselves with time and the buck construction probably cost, in the neighborhood of $1,000. Yes?
Four-story vehicle, which it looked real, of course. Was it one of the large trucks used for mining? And two, as an actor, do you feel second to none to the technical and special effects? He does tonight.
No, the only thing I've ever said about that is I feel like a raisin in a gigantic fruit salad, you know. Yeah, right, yeah, down over there. Oh, can you imagine what it would be like to get paid to get up in the morning and go play on those sets? I would get there in the morning and George would say, okay, you get to rescue the princess today, kill 2 stormtroopers, and swing across a gigantic chasm. Like, oh boy! Then, you know, that was the hardest thing to, you know, for the character to accept all this technology and all these robots is just the normal thing. You know, even street lights on Tatooine are little robots that follow you around wherever you need light. And, you know, you can never go, oh, what's that? I forget the question.
The sandcrawler, long shots of the sandcrawler are miniature of the whole thing rumbling along across the desert. We did build a full-size piece of it that was about 40 feet high and 125 feet long, I think, close to it anyway. We did investigate the possibility of using a real, very large earth mover or some such vehicle, but the main problem is that they were not where we needed it to be, and they also were very, very valuable where they are, and also very expensive to rent. So we found it was better to build our own. We fabricated the pieces in the studio in London and shipped it all to Tunisia on trucks. We sent 4 what they call road trains in Europe, which are truck-trailer combinations, across the English Channel, across France and Italy to Genoa, and across on the ferry to Tunisia. And the last group of material, the land speeder and costumes and the robots and all the rest of that, went over in a chartered Lockheed Hercules C-130 and unloaded. We shot for 3 weeks and got back on the charter and flew back to England.
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to know if Mark Hamill did his own step.
That was one of the nicest things, because a lot of the times in television, whatever, it seems like a simple stunt. They won't let you do it because you can hurt yourself and hold up production. George said, you're going to do everything. I did. He let me. I didn't get damaged until after the film was over.
Way back there. Right.
In Star Wars, weren't you kind of hoping you'd be able to have sort of like
I think that was in the original concept, wasn't it? There was a Macquarie painting and everything, but after all the rest of the things they let me do, that was just a drop in the bucket. But I have a feeling I might meet him sometime, somewhere, if they make a sequel, because he sort of spins out and you're not really sure if he's really gone.
Yes.
Please beg Mr. Lucas to save the outfits.
We have quite a bit of material, actually. We put together, no one's going to see it for a long time, but we have put together quite a bit of material.
Yes. Two of the Jawas are here. One was standing up back there, just sat down.
We used, they're my children back there. They were pressed into service when we had some technical problems in Tunisia. We couldn't find people small enough. But no, we had an English midget, a Tunisian midget, and several children that performed the function of the Jawas. So we had to give all directions to Jawas in English, French, and Arabic.
That's why they have a random language.
Or at least my own immediate family. I can't wait. I haven't seen, I've seen the trailer, I've seen the slides, but you know, we didn't go to dailies. George doesn't allow actors in dailies, so I'm just as excited as you are to see it. I'll be standing in line right next to you.
Yes.
So who directed and developed the movements of C-3PO robot?
The robot was worked out, the actual suit was worked out over about an 8-month period to, what we decided to do originally was that it had to be body cast to one particular person who was an English mime. And we took a complete casting of his body, and then the pieces were sculpted out of clay first as a check, and then molds were extracted from that. Most of that work was done over about 4 or 5 times to work out the mechanical configurations. He developed the movements more or less on his own, practicing in the suit. It was very painful for him to wear it, and most of what he tried to function as normally as possible in the suit. And what it turns out on the film more or less looks half mechanical, half real. And it wasn't a conscious thing on his part to try to affect a particular way of moving. It was just what he was required to do to perform in various scenes.
Yes. Yes.
I would like to, first of all, I think you people are the great white hope for science fiction movies for a long time. And I'd like to know from the actor's point, did you feel that your character gave you an opportunity to act, and will this person live and breathe and stand on his own with a general audience instead of merely being an augmentation to the technical aspects?
Yes. Now, the concept of the film originally was that the people were the most important thing, that the technology was just there, just like you go out and you get in your car and you drive home. We didn't want to get involved in trying to explain how things function or why they function that way. And because it's fantasy, we don't relate to science at any level. We don't explain to you why things work, how they work, or even if they could work in our own system. It's not important to the story. The people are the important thing. Everything that you see in the film is more or less used. I mean, there's nothing new except for the Death Star. That's new. You see clean rivets and things, but the rest of everything else is all beat up. It's quite old, secondhand. There's oil running all over everything, and so there's no pretext to make it new and shiny. It's an environment that's been existing for quite a while, and the people that live in the environment are the important things, and we hope that's what comes across in the film.
All of the gorgeous models that we made, they're all beautiful and pristine and pretty and detailed, and then we had to take them and make them muddy.
Yes. Yes. Our relationship, as far as merchandising is concerned, is that we have an equal relationship with 20th Century Fox. They can't merchandise anything without us, and we can't merchandise anything without them, and our whole thing is to have quality out there. We are not going to have rack toys. We are not going to have a number of other things. We probably will have a certain amount of toys meant for the under 12-year-olds, because that's one of the areas that the toy companies are interested in, but they will be pretty well watched over. As far as other items are concerned, we're trying to watch it as closely as possible, and trying to keep it in line. It's really tough, and of course, if you simply go through the dealer's room and see a lot of stuff that's been ripped off from Star Trek or whoever else has it, because fans want it, ultimately, and that's why it's there. It's hard to control. The main thing we are not going to do, or in 20th Century is not going to do what they did with Planet of the Apes. They're not going to go that far and put out that much junk merchandise. And so it's going to be carefully watched over. But as I said, anybody that has anything that they're particularly interested in seeing come out, let me know. Because there are certain things right now that the manufacturers, certain people are very much against appearing. Yes?
That was a lot of fun. they got it too quick for my liking. I want to do some more takes because isn't that the ultimate dream when you're playing Robin Hood, to scoop up a princess and swing somewhere? Yes.
In the film, how do you visualize lightsabers? What do they do with one against another?
The lightsabers themselves, well, they're beams of light that more or less are high energy sources, and when they hit each other, it's more or less like solid objects. I mean, they spark, but they won't pass through each other. But they, as any high energy light source would do, they will cut things just like a sharp knife will.
Separate from us, this has been dealt with by a science fiction writer already who's explained something of the concept of a lightsaber, which we didn't know about until much later after the film was done. That's Larry Niven, who's come up with much the same type of concept. Yes?
Listeners always seem that there's only one great space opera every 10 years. First Destination Moon, Revenge Planet, and then 2001.
Now Star Wars!
Would you like to see more?
Yes.
He was an actor that I was aware of ever since I was little because of all the English comedies that he made, the Lavender Hill Mob and the Lady Killers. And he's one of those actors that's so versatile you sometimes don't even recognize him because he changes his physical appearance, with each role. I never hoped to even meet him, much less work with him. I mean, I was pretty much in awe of him, but over the period of time, I became relaxed around him, and he loosened up. He's a really witty guy, really funny, and I just had a great time. I've written him a couple of letters since the filming, and we correspond a little bit. Well, he was making Murder by Death when he heard about it, is what he told me, and he wasn't really sure he was interested in science fiction, whatever you want to call it, but felt he owed it to George Lucas because of the success, and of course, Gary's of American Graffiti. And he read the script, and he really felt swept up in the fairy tale-like quality, that Wizard of Oz kind of. He told me it was something he'd read his grandchildren before they went to sleep. And the relationship between my character and Guinness's in the film, it's perfect because he's a wizard. He has this great knowledge and this years of experience, and he's my mentor. And basically that's the way it was because I've done lots and lots of television, but no feature films. Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yes?
Well, we had several English cameramen that we were considering. We interviewed several of them, and we had a group. Gil Taylor and Jeff Unsworth, and a couple of others who were our prime group. And it worked out that more or less he was the only one that was available during the time that we had to shoot the picture of that prime group. Yes, we've had not a firm second unit. We had one of our camera operators, Jeff Glover, did some second unit work in Tunisia. Then we've done odds and ends of second units scattered around. We sent a unit down to Guatemala to shoot the jungle material, and some additional desert material was done in Death Valley. They were done by 4 or 5 different cameramen, people who were available, with people that we'd worked with before, but no one in particular. Yes, the picture was filmed in Panavision, with the exception of the miniatures and special effects and matte shots, which were filmed in VistaVision, or the 8-perf sideways format, to be able to shoot with flat spherical lenses.
Let's take just 3 more questions, and then we'll finish up, okay? Back there. Yeah, go ahead. About holding a question, we'll take 3 more questions and then we'll show the trailer. Go ahead.
Where did you first get your acting, proficiency? Where did you learn to act? pretty young and everything.
Yeah.
I forget where you are.
Yeah, a lot of luck. No, I always wanted desperately. I think the first thing I remember really connecting with was when I saw the original King Kong. I was like 3 years old, and I said, I've got to get somehow into that business. And I don't know, I went to high school in Japan. When I came back here, I just started doing little theater, and I went to Los Angeles City College in LA, picked up an agent along the way from a play, and then just started doing, I was on a soap opera for 9 months, and I've done about 38 nighttime guest shots and 5 television movies, and now Star Wars. So, if you want it badly enough, I think in anything, if you've got the determination, you'll get it.
Yes?
You have like a little certain sorcery in the movie, like lightsabers, the wizardry, and all that. Was it meant to be like that?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
It was intended that on this planet there would be a bit of sorcery, and to work in that whole idea of sword and sorcery, to make it fit, integrated into the whole scheme. Last question? Yes?
They didn't, once we made the deal to make the film, they left us alone. We made the film that we wanted to make. However, with any movie, it never turns out 100% like you want it. I mean, a film is a collaborative work of art. And we had, counting everyone who's worked on this picture, we probably have had over 800 people involved in the picture in one way or another. And they all made varying contributions to the picture. It would take all the money there was in the world probably to make it perfect. It isn't perfect, and unfortunately after working on it for 4 years, we see more of the defects than we see the positive aspects. But an audience seeing it for the first time is not going to have that problem. So I would say it's probably 75% of what we really set out to do, and that's pretty good.
I want to thank you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much. Hope you enjoy the film. Thank you, Mark Hamill, Gary Kurtz, John Dykstra, and thank you, Dennis Bierman, and the Jawas. Who wants to stay? We'll show the trailer again. Thank you very much.
How much some autograph?
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American graffiti, now with you, an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars. Here they come! The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. Spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am Steve Lippincott, human cyborg relation, and this is my counterpart. Hello.
It's an epic of heroes. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars.